Hey, good morning, everybody. How's it going? My name is Eric Buhrendorf, CEO of Evernet Consulting. You're watching Evernet Reviews on Evernet TV. Today we have Martin from Ruffian Software with us to talk about TechIDManager. Hey, Martin, how's it going?
Good. How about yourself, Eric?
Doing pretty good, doing pretty good. Thanks for being willing to come on the show. We're a fledgling show, but we're having a pretty good response to the show, and we're happy to have vendors of products and services come on and basically give us a demo of products and services that we see as relevant in our space. We're an IT company, and turns out our fastest growing vertical are IT business owners who want help managing their business better. So we are demoing products and services in the IT space, and yeah, we're having a lot of fun with it. So yeah, we're gonna do kind of a high level, and then hopefully we're gonna see a demo of the actual product from you. Right? Does that sound good?
Oh yeah, we'll do a demo. We'll show you how it works technically, share all the features, let you answer ask any questions you want, and we'll answer them best we can.
Excellent. So let's see. To get us started, give us a quick summary of Ruffian Software, and well, no, let me back up here. Tell us who you are and what you do for Ruffian Software.
All right, I'm Martin White. I got a computer engineering degree from Clemson University. I worked in many areas, and I worked in industrial automation, business systems, security, software. I wrote genetic algorithms for a while to do logistical distribution problem solving. And for 12 years, I was the head of a development wing attached to an MSP. In those 12 years, I saw security go from something that nobody cared about to something everybody's hyper focused on. Lots of software came out to help MSPs. Malware fighting software, backup running software. But one area that was really missed in that security transition was privileged account management. The MSP that I worked with and a bunch of MSPs that I talked to in the field, they had one administrator account and usually one password or some password scheme that would get full access to all their clients. In 2017, 2018, I looked around the market to help the MSP I was working with solve this privileged account management problem. There was nothing in the market that would help an MSP really accomplish privileged account management. We had 25 technicians and we serviced 400 domains. Looking at that, there were several issues that came up with privileged account management. We can go into those issues if you want.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So you're the founder and CEO of Ruffian.
Yep.
And presently you're the lead engineer, developer. Interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
I saw this problem in the market, and it was a problem that I was at the MSP was facing. There was no software in the market. Since I write software as my career, I decided to solve this problem for MSPs. And that's what Ruffian Software did, and it's what our product TechIDManager does. So it's privileged account management just for MSPs.
So the MSP is your customer.
Yep.
Okay. And is there a corporate use for that, or is it just strictly channel to MSP model?
So the privileged account management problem for corporate entities and for enterprises, 𝘂𝗍𝗁𝗁𝗁, CyberArk, Beyond Trust, they all solve that problem really well.
Okay.
Where they do not solve the problem is for MSPs. When you have one domain,
multi-tenant.
Yeah, when you have one domain, use one of those other products. They're great. They're phenomenal. They do many, many things that corporate and enterprise product customers need. For an MSP, where you have 50, 100, 900, or 1,000 unconnected domains, unconnected Azure tenants, unconnected things that you need accounts for everybody for, and you need privileged account management, that is a completely different problem. It's a different scale of problem that those enterprise products don't solve. So our product is specifically targeted at MSPs.
Got it. And do you have any competition in your space?
The competition that we face, that most people put us up against, is all password vaults. The historic practice in the MSP space has been to have one administrator account that every technician at the MSP uses when they access a client.
Got it.
They look that account up in a password vault, an Excel spreadsheet. They just happen to have it memorized, whatever it is. But technicians 1 through 30, all the technicians, John, Eric, Martin, they all use the same account, usually called administrator or some variant like Everadmin, something like that.
Right.
They all know the
I guess
password.
the current practice now is to use an administrative account that doesn't say, "Hey, I'm an administrative account," right?
Yes.
And so so you're saying, so we all use the same, because I'm an MSP as well. So we all use the same key to open the lock.
Yep.
And the obvious problem with that is lack of accountability, for one.
Lack of accountability, lack of traceability. You can't put MFA on that account because you can't share MFA. And MFA is definitely coming down. There's every security framework, NIST, CMMC, SOC 2, HIPAA, PCI, every single security framework says that an account should belong to a person.
Agreed. Right.
Right. That's like a base security level thing. But MSPs, as much as we're talking about security industry now, they're just ignoring that for their own internal use.
Right.
They don't look in the mirror. They
you're so right. You're so right. And I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and I remember some of the administrative practices that we've done. It's embarrassing.
Yes.
It's embarrassing. Even though you feel like even though you know the security practice and the best practices, rather, sometimes the real world implementation can lag, right?
Yeah. So like the MSP that I worked with, 25 technicians, 400 domains. If you make a unique account for every one of those technicians on every one of those domains, that's 10,000 accounts to make, 10,000 passwords to rotate. If you do that manually, it's just untenable.
Yeah, it's
impossible.
Untenable.
It's too much effort.
Right. So okay, so your product seeks to automate that to some degree, if not entirely. Some central administration.
Automate that process.
So the account,
rotating the passwords, setting the rights, disabling the account when the technician leaves when it's appropriate. Every bit of that is automated. There's zero effort on the technician part and near zero effort on every manager's part.
Do you find that this may be moot, but do you find how do you address, so I'm obsessive compulsive. I'm sure my contemporaries are. How do you reconcile the potential clutter that might make on an AD and an Active Directory?
You can set OUs as organizing units. So you can put all the administrator accounts in one OU, separate from the user accounts. All the administrator users
create an OU for the MSP, perhaps, and then at least
OU for the MSP, an OU for the administrators, an OU for the users. Like you can organize AD pretty well so that it's not this big jumbled clutter of users in the user's OU. Right.
And then does your system manage account retention, auto deletion, that sort of thing? Is there a window in which you can say, clean in deactivated or inactive user accounts after a period of time, 6 months, 24 months, that sort of thing? Or
so every actual credentialed security expert that I've talked to, and all the people who are really involved in computer forensics, stuff like that, because when you delete an AD account, the only thing you're deleting is the reference from name to that OID.
Right, the OUID. Right.
So you're not actually all you're doing is clean up a little bit of visual clutter when somebody looks at AD. There's no reason to delete that account. And from a traceability, security, forensics, computer forensics perspective, those accounts should never be deleted.
Oh.
It is just an OCD mentality that you want to clean up this little tree that you look at once in a blue moon.
Right, because there's no storage implication, you're saying.
The storage implication is like 1,000 bytes.
KB or byte, right? Not even right. So it's completely obsessive compulsive.
Right, and when you delete that account, you give up all the traceability that you ever need looking backwards, which is the reason to have unique accounts. Right, it's one of the reasons. So
right. Well, I mean, even tax returns get thrown away after 7 years, right? So I mean, maybe at some point you can the obsessive compulsive can be addressed. But all right, I see what you're saying. Wow, that's really fascinating. So
you say 7 years, but just anecdotally, I was talking to a security expert at lunch last week, and they are doing email polls from 2009 based on a DOJ request for criminal investigation that's going on. And they need traceability back well past 7 years. If you have the electronic records, you need traceability back into that point because you don't know how far back something might go.
Right. Yeah. I mean, certainly if you've got the data and you can access the data, that would be tapped. Yeah. So your unique my next question was what's your unique selling proposition? I think that speaks for itself.
Unique selling proposition is the for an MSP, every technician gets a unique account on every network, domain, tenant, machine, fully managed for them.
And, our MSP model with our clients do not care in the least what their Active Directory looks like.
Yep.
Certainly, right. Okay. So you don't find that the end client has anything adverse to say to this. I mean, I bet you it's probably a unique selling position for the MSP to say, hey, this is how we manage your network, and this is how the competition won't manage your network, likely, right?
Right. A lot of our clients actually go to their clients as a selling tool and say, hey, look, we have traceability. We follow these security frameworks. We're SOC 2 compliant because we do this, like all these things, but at the underlying effort, it's a unique account. And we do all these things. We get all this traceability. They actually use it as a selling point to their clients. They say, we've changed our admin passwords, change every 24 hours on every account, on every domain with no effort. So you can go to your client as an MSP and say, hey, you need to change your password. And if they give you flack and say, hey, do you change your password? Be like, yeah, we change our password on your network every day. Every technician changes their password on your network every day.
Wow. So you're saying your product automatically updates the password of the ID or of the account?
Every technician account gets their password rotated every 24 hours to by default, full random 16-character password. You can make it longer, shorter. We have some clients who are in pretty paranoid industries, and they set their passwords to be 32-bit or 32-character full random passwords that change every day for every tech, every client, every domain.
I mean, if your platform can support that, it's probably a low lift anyways to do that. So who cares, right?
Yeah, right. If you can change a password once every 6 months, you can change it once every month. You can change it once every day.
You can change it every minute if you wanted to. Who cares, right? I mean, it's
every minute gets kind of problematic in using it because after you've logged in, UAC prompt comes up, you got to go get it again. It becomes problematic.
Got it.
It can change in the middle of use. So like every 24 hours, we've really found to be the most effective.
Wow, that's really fascinating. And you're telling me that at least from the MSP level, you have no natural competitor?
Password vaults are literally the only people that do this at an MSP space.
I mean, we use a password, an enterprise or MSP oriented password management platform, right? That allows us to securely share and administer credentials across our team.
Yes.
That vendor, and I'm not going to be, although I'm sure I mentioned it before, that vendor does proclaim to have a feature that allows us to update passwords in platforms or of the services. But what the marketing team says of a product is not always what the function is of the product. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Vaporware is a big problem.
Yeah. So our password manager does proclaim to say, we can do a central password change, but certainly not to the degree of what you're describing. Now, let me ask you this: is this specifically for the Microsoft Active Directory environment, or does this cover other user databases or platforms?
So right now we cover domain controllers for domain accounts. We do local Windows machines, do local accounts on specific machines like vhosts, things like that, if you care about them. We also do have an Azure tenant plugin. So we do the exact same thing on Azure tenants, where every technician gets a unique account to manage an Azure tenant. So you're not using a shared account there. And you're also not using SSO, which I have particular security concerns with SSO.
I am not all in on SSO because of the obvious single point of failure. So
you break one internet facing account and then all of a sudden you've lost access everywhere. Or so you've given away access to everything.
I agree with you completely. And I mean, it's a proven, and we're on tangent, forgive the tangent, but any security professional should know that the easier you make systems, there's a direct corollary trade-off between usability and security. The more usable you make it, the less secure it is. I mean, it's like almost a law of the universe, right?
Yes.
So you implement SSO for your clients and yourself, and now you've got a single point of failure. Sure, it's easy to log into all these platforms as you come and go, but it's obviously a single point of failure issue. I mean, I was even because of the same reason I put off password managers for a lot of years. I remember famously in the mid 2000s, I think Internet Explorer, which at the time was predominant internet web browser, had its password manager hacked.
Mm-hmm.
And then ever since then, I was like, I was off on password managers. However, now I've come to think that having a password manager help you manage complex, unique passwords is a lot better than the risk of using the same password. It's the risk of having a password manager and a central point of password storage or management is a lower risk than using the same password or human generate. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
that's where I am
Yeah,
on
yeah.
password managers. But that's interesting. So do
So
you
even
see?
all those password vaults and all those password managers that people put us up as competition, they all choose a different paradigm. They choose that paradigm of share your administrator account, keep it secure, keep it secret, don't let people know it. They don't, like you said, you have a platform that claims to change a password, but you sound like you don't use it. You don't use that feature if they do have it.
Yeah, I don't have the I don't have the trust into it for sure. Yeah, the trust is. I'm not saying it won't work, but it doesn't have my trust. And the other thing too is the problem when a feature is not ubiquitous.
Mm-hmm.
So the feature might work across several platforms or vendors, but there's almost like a heavier burden to a feature that's not uniformly supported. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's where I'm with that. So that's fascinating. So do you see a future where your product could work for maybe cloud or web-based services? Like,
Yep.
What's your favorite web-based service? Zapier or I don't know, some cloud-based CRM software that you might use, or we run our entire business on web-based systems now. So
Mm-hmm.
we do have Azure AD and MSO and all that, but do you see a possibility or some way to tap that?
Yeah, we have just architected the product in a way that allows us to write adapters which tie in this functionality into any authentication source. So we've written an adapter to domain controllers, an adapter to local machines, an adapter to Azure AD tenants. We're working on adapters into other authentication sources, Google Suite, any of those products, even any of the RMMs where a technician needs
Right.
account. The broad stroke plan is
RMM is a perfect example. Talk to me about that. What's your roadmap and thinking in that regard?
So when the broad stroke plan is when a technician joins an MSP, there are tons of accounts they need created. They need an account for the RMM, they need a remote connection tool, they need an account for the AV, the ERD,
Right.
like the backup software, all that stuff. And then they need an account on each client's network. We've talked to clients who when they hire somebody, they have to make 57 different accounts.
Yeah,
onboarding software.
Onboarding an employee resource with an MSP is labor intensive for sure.
Yeah. And then you have all these places the technician has to remember their password. We want to correlate all that into authentication for the technician at an MSP. So when you hire a technician, you say, hey, make all these accounts. It makes all these accounts. It rotates all the passwords every day for everywhere they need to log in. When they go to log in, they bring up either a little USB hardware key and say, hey, I am who I am. Here's some secret information. Sign me in. But it's not planned to be like SSO where it's internet facing and you break something that's internet facing. You have access to all these places. You still have a unique account at all these places. We really believe in defense in layers. So if you break one account, you only get access to that one thing.
Right. Zero trust and layered security for sure.
Right. So our plan is to cover all those authentication sources where you need an account. We'll manage it, we'll rotate the password, and we don't have access to any of that information.
Right. Of course. I mean, because before we started rolling, we were even talking about your development team and strategy, and you're so security centric that you're not even considering using offshore coding talent. So
right. If I'm going to hire to grow the coding talent, it's going to be all internal. It's going to be owned resources, owned stuff. People are going to have responsibility for the pieces they write and do.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So you definitely have my attention. Now, there's, and maybe it's too soon to talk, but I mean, you're single, and I mean, the product the product use case speaks for itself, I think. Sounds like and I don't want to reduce, I think you're doing what sounds like amazing work by yourself. which I think is all we run our MSP is incredibly lean. So I understand, we had 26 employees in 2015, 16. We're now down to 6 employees doing the same volume of work and 4 times the profit. So we understand running lean. But you're clearly going to be a target for acquisition.
That is what I am told.
Have you been solicited yet, or do you understand that is definitely in your future?
I have been solicited. I understand that's a possibility in the future.
So are you already planning your beach house and your private plane, or what?
No, I am not. I don't have beach house exploration. I want a mountain lake house, but
all right,
we're buying a mountain lake house already. We're moving next month.
That's awesome. And there's so much opportunity for, not opportunity. Our industry is so hot on consolidation. So, Kaseya, Datto, ConnectWise, these guys are going to be beating down your door for sure. The only thing, and this is another tangent, but the only thing I hope is that you, and to their credit too, I should say that when ConnectWise and Datto, it's funny when I still think it's funny that Datto acquired Autotask. I always say that was like Firestone of buying Ford. You know what I mean? It's like a tire company buying a car company. It seems like Autotask should have bought Datto, in my opinion, because Autotask, in my opinion, also is the more powerful tool. But I think somehow Datto and their no offense, Datto, we love you. It's like they're just like it's like a single solution, which is the backup, and then they bought this robust business management platform, Autotask. So, anyways, that's my other tangent on that. But to their credit, say again.
Businesses often, the amount of backing and financial prowess they have is not really related to their main product. Lots of times,
I guess not.
Yeah, I'm familiar with several business situations where a much smaller entity bought a much bigger entity for business reasons, not for product reasons.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So anyways, when I compare ConnectWise to Datto, it doesn't feel like an apples to apples comparison, because it's really ConnectWise and Autotask, which are the business management softwares. But anyways, I just want to finish the thought. To their credit, when they do buy a product, where they compete in the same space, so far everybody seems to be continuing with the openness of platforms. I don't know if you know anything about all the tools that MSP did you run an MSP? Is that your background?
I was the head of a development wing attached to an MSP.
Oh, okay.
So I was intimately familiar with the business dealings in the MSP and like day-to-day processing and all that kind of stuff. But my job was not to do the MSP stuff.
Right. Well, that's exciting. I love the business side, and I think it sounds like you have a really exciting product. So let me just see if we have any other notes. I want to make sure I cover all the notes. You're very security centric, obviously, NIST, HIPAA, and all of the regulatory security requirements. You're obviously taking that into consideration. I mean, this goes far to actually satisfy those security requirements, right?
Not only that, does it go far to satisfy them? They're like, HIPAA has some serious fines related to not doing individual accounts for the MSP.
Right. From a technical standpoint, do you have a nomenclature or naming methodology or paradigm that the MSP will use, or does the AD user for each technician, is it just who they are? Is it their actual persona?
So we'll cover this I can show you this in the demo, but in general.
Okay, yeah, this leads into our demo. So if you're, before we get into the demo, I want to talk a little more business stuff. What is because this is important. What is the MSP's buying experience with you guys?
So every MSP that has bought our product has done a demo. Then they do a trial that's usually 5 days long, sometimes maybe 10 days long, depending on how much they want to try it out. We do a white glove install to begin that trial, where we get one of our technical people, me or somebody else, on the phone with them on a call like this. We set up the product. We make sure it is working. We train them on it. We show them all the options, show everything like that. They use it for 5 days. We call them, hey, do you like it? They say yes. They start paying for it, and they pay a monthly subscription fee. And anytime they have problems, we can have a video call. We talk about it with them. We show them how to fix it.
How long have you been to market?
I quit my job in February 2019 and wrote the product. In August 2019, I got my first client. And then in October 2020, I hired several salespeople, and we have gone to market
So
since August 2019.
2 years you're in market. Okay. And a 5-day trial you find is good enough?
Yeah. Like we started out offering, this is hilarious. We started out offering 30-day trials, 1 month, 2 months, whatever. And we found out that the MSP either has time to try it out or they don't. And the ones that have time to try it out, 5 days is plenty of time. Because in 5 days, you get 5 password rotations per technicians, per network, per domain. They can use it to log into those domains all they want. And it just shows it does what it does.
Yeah, you're probably right. I can see that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got a 5-day demo, and how much does it cost?
It is based on the number. So our product is laid out in 3 ways. There's a tech client, which runs on the technician's computer. There's a domain service or Azure tenant that runs on the domain controller in the Azure tenant to actually do the password rotation. And there's a management piece that runs in the cloud. We charge based on the number of places that you install one of the adapters that creates, rotates, and maintains accounts. So we charge. For lack of better words, that'd be a tenant or a client? Yeah, a tenant or a client usually. So, okay. Or if you install on an individual machine to rotate accounts on that machine counts as one toward the licensing also.
Well, so if you have a work group with 10 computers or 9 computers, the MSP is going to get bagged for 9 licenses?
Yep. 100 licenses is $200 a month. 300 licenses is $400 a month, and 1,000 licenses is $600 a month. Okay. And it's $600 per month for block of 1,000 above that.
Okay, so that's pretty fair.
It's very fair. Almost all of the clients fall. Most MSPs have domain controllers on all of their clients. That's where they install it. So it's essentially 1 license per client. Right. Install in that small to medium sized category. So they're $200 to $400 a month.
You could see though that if you're running a bunch of work groups, the value could get lopsided.
I also say that if you're running a bunch of work group computers, there is a pretty solid security and business argument why you shouldn't be doing that. You should join them to either Azure AD or the domain controller. Some centralized authentication source is where you should join them.
A debate for another day, perhaps.
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, if you fall under any security regulations, that's it makes that whole argument much more lopsided toward you need an authentication source. If you don't fall under security regulations, then yeah, work groups are fine. And we're going to.
Well, I'm just thinking like, if you have, I'm just trying to think. I'm on the spot here, conceptualizing a corporation or company with a bunch of work from home and situations where, you're using web-based services, user-owned hardware.
Is your MSP supporting that end user owned hardware?
Right.
Or just the web app side of it.
Right. I mean, there's cases where there is support for that user owned hardware and not. I've seen both cases, and then I'm just trying to think: is it reasonable to through a policy say you have to rotate your maybe the use case is not relevant. I'd have to contemplate that a little bit more.
Yeah.
But all right, I won't nitpick. So all right, that covers the cost, and we'll have links to your website, of course, in more detail that the viewers can see.
Ruffiansoftware.com.
Yeah, and then I'm really dripping the faucet here, and this is my last question before we get to your demonstration. What about a roadmap? And maybe I should save that to the end. But I always love roadmaps. What do you have on the? You're going to show us the demonstration, and then do you want to maybe save it after the demonstration to kind of talk about what the long game is, the short game?
Sure, let's do that after the demo. That way you can see where it is and how the roadmap features fit in and what they really entail.
Perfect. All right, I'm going to do a screen share here. I'm going to bring you up,
okay,
and we're going to get right into the demo. Excellent.
So real quick, we'll just cover a couple, I'll point out because HIPAA is a really nice security framework, but it has teeth with it. So real quick, let me just point out 2 particular HIPAA fines and violations that are related to privileged accounts and MSPs. So this is the compliancy group. They have a webpage which shows all the most egregious HIPAA fines enforced recently. There's a $2.3 million fine here that was paid by cie__PSC LLC. They are a managed service provider that had to pay this $2.3 million fine. If we look at the details on that, we see that they paid that fine because a hacker stole compromised administrative credentials and used those credentials for 6 months, stole 6 million people's PHI because they didn't rotate a password. And this was not the provider that paid the fine. This was the MSP that paid the fine.
Wow.
There's another one here. There's a $650,000 fine that went to a MSP for not properly securing the people's privileged accounts. Like, this is not just a theoretical issue. HIPAA has teeth that's actually enforcing this.
Wow.
Yeah. So the concept that you need a unique account for every technician on every domain is not just something that makes it convenient for MSP or efficient. It is what security practice is and has been forever. MSPs just haven't had the tools to solve it. So that's what TechIDManager is. It's a tool to solve privileged account management for MSPs by making a unique account for every technician on every domain. I know I say that hundreds of times.
No, listen, you're preaching to the choir here, man. I mean, our audience here, I don't know how many of our clients are going to see this, but for all the MSPs out here watching this demo, I think you have a captivated audience because obviously the need is real for sure.
Yeah. So what we wrote is called TechIDManager. TechIDManager has 3 components that work together to make a unique account for every technician, every domain, automatically rotate the password every 24 hours, and have 0 effort to manage all of that on the technician's part. The first is the tech client, this piece of software right here that runs on the technician's computer. We'll cover it first, how it works, how a technician uses every day to get logged in, how they use the credentials, stuff like that. The second piece is a series of adapters that run at the various places accounts need to be created. We have an adapter that runs on domain controllers to make domain accounts, like this one. We have adapters that run on local machines to make local machine accounts, like this one, local administrator accounts or just non-administrator accounts. We have an adapter that runs in Azure to make Azure-based accounts, like this account.
So the use case, okay, so the other use case would be maybe a VM host, maybe that you would run that on the VM host in addition to the AD environment if the VM host isn't joined to the AD.
Right. Lots of people have accounts on the VM host is actually hosting the domain controller.
Right.
So you don't want that VM host joined to that domain.
Right.
Like, there are obvious issues with being conjoined with your own child.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So in this piece of software, Tech Client, this runs on each technician's computer. This shows the technician all the networks, all the places where they have accounts, their specific username on that account. And if they want to see their password, they can show the password. They enter a passphrase. And this is my password for goldfish.net. My account is martin.mit@goldfish.net. My password is 3PB, whatever, 16 character full random. It last changed around midnight last night, I can see over here. And it's going to change around midnight again tonight.
So no administration for the tech or for the MSP for the passwords. So you're rotating passwords using your own algorithm and randomization. How about, and don't let me derail you, I'm sorry, but how about the authentication into the TechIDManager?
So there is, like when you saw, when I went to showed the passwords, there's a passphrase. This passphrase is an encryption key that's actually used to encrypt all the information that's stored locally. And then there's also the ability. Oh, let me get to the right tab.
So is that authentication password manager friendly? Is that typical credential management on the text part?
Yeah, most people memorize that because you have to enter it every time you start the tech client, every time that it locks the screen. Every time you go to the settings tab, anytime you want to show a password, you have to enter that. So it's something people memorize and they know. They can put that in a password manager if they want.
Okay.
But it's an encryption key so that it actually is the secret encryption that encrypts all the locally stored cached information.
And is there a second factor to authenticate that?
You can enable multi-factor access to this client if you want. You enable it. You take a picture of the QR code.
Beautiful.
You
And
confirm it.
you reveal the secret key as well during that process. I hate when MFA implementation doesn't do that. Did mouse over the QR code? Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we see so many times MFA. Unfortunately, MFA is implemented ununiformly across products, and so when that secret, because we use our password manager does support MFA, so we don't necessarily need our mobile devices to be our second form of identification. We can use other software.
So to step off a little tangent there, personal gripe of mine. When you are storing the username and the password and the MFA secret information in the same location, you open a significant security hole for extrication of that information from one location, and then you forever lose that multi-factor. Multiple factor is supposed to be a second way at the time of login to confirm who someone is.
Right.
So storing that MFA in the same place you're storing the account and the username and password,
you're getting the single point of failure for sure.
Single point of failure for sure. So
right.
You can do that, but I suggest that you do not do that.
Right.
Yeah. So these are the managed passwords. You can see the password or managed credentials. You can see the password on them if you want, or when somebody goes to use this, I'll show you how they can use ConnectWise Control to use these credentials. So this is ConnectWise Control, connected to server control. This is on, you get to the spot where you want to log in. We see this is the 𝗁𝗵 domain. In order to get connected to the 𝗁𝗵 domain, I need my credentials for the 𝗁𝗵 domain. I could scroll down through here and find them. If I was a larger MSP and I had 50 or 100 or 1,000 clients, there'd be 1,000 lines here. We're about being more efficient, so we added this search capability. So when I click search, it's going to go out on my computer. It's going to find all those open windows that it thinks are remote connection tools, and it's going to make an intelligent guess about what set of credentials it thinks I need right now to get connected to that machine. So if I click it, we see it narrow that whole list down to just 𝗁𝗵 and server. 𝗁𝗵 is the credentials we care about, and server is another window I have open. I'm going to show you here in a second. To use my 𝗁𝗵 credentials, I could look at them. I could type them in. I could copy paste them. But even easier, I'm going to click send both. And I get a short countdown. And then Tech Client is actually going to type for me my username and my 16-character full random password in this window with me never needing to know it, look at it, think about it, fat finger it. And as a technician, I move on my day after I get logged in. I move on with my day and keep going, and I don't have to do any privileged account management. I don't ever get faced with a password prompt because my password is rotated every 24 hours. Even if the group policy says it's every 90 days, I don't have to ever have to stop, interrupt my day, and change a password, write it back down somewhere, keep going. We can also see my account for the 𝗁𝗵 domain is martin_black.mit-admin@jeep.org because this particular client requires usernames for admins being a particular format. We support domain by domain username formatting. By default, we can see that the username is my name.company name, martin.mit@𝘂𝗵𝗶𝘀, martin.mit@goldfish, martin.mit@Dorito. So that because the company name is included in there, and even in this formatting, the company name is included, there's no overlap with a normal user on the system who happens to have my same name. So you would be Eric.Evernet would not overlap with a normal user named Eric on their system. In this way, you really can have all of your technicians, no matter what their names are, have unique accounts on every client without affecting the client's access to their own network. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So, and when you're logged in, it's you. You can see. So if another technician from my company logged in, they would see me logged in. There'd be no question. If you're using a shared administrator account, there's a real issue when you log in and you see that same administrator logged in. You don't know who it is. You don't know if it's some other technician.
Right.
You don't know if it's a hacker that's gained access. You just blindly trust with no proof that.
Yeah, no, the identity accountability speaks for itself for sure.
Yeah. So another thing that I saw MSPs often technicians have to do is they'd have to double hop or triple hop to get somewhere. So we have here is that server machine 1.1.100, which is a virtual host. On the virtual host, there are a bunch of virtual machines running. One of those is this Windows 10 machine on the Goldfish domain. Like to get my credentials for that machine, you clearly can't search Windows inside of Windows and remote machines, but if you just start typing, as you type, it narrows down the list. There are two things that match gold. One is a domain account maintained for me on this domain, Goldfish. There's another local account maintained for me on that machine because I care specifically about that machine. Same thing. I'm going to use these credentials. I click send both. Nope. Cancel that. I got to get to the place I want to log in. Then I click send both. No matter if it's over a double hop or a triple hop or a quadruple hop into a web browser connected to a firewall that's AD joined, TechIDManager enters my unique credentials for this domain, this machine, gets me logged in.
So,
as a technician, I move on with my day.
So let me just be overly technical and in the weeds here. That you're programmatically using like a macro, a timed macro.
I'm using a keyboard emulation after a certain amount of time. And so if you select the right window, it enters the credentials correctly. You can choose to send just the username or just the password. You can even choose to send the credentials without the domain, because there's some tools that don't want the domain name when you're connecting to them.
But if you that send both button, if you had a notepad window open, it would obviously do what? Like it would the username and then hit the tab key and then.
Yep.
Okay.
Username, tab, password, enter. So, and some people seem to have gripe with you can put that password into Notepad, but this is their account. This is an individual's account. They should have access to their password, their account.
I agree.
Yeah. And if somebody does see that password because they typed it in a Notepad, it's different tomorrow.
No, I listen. I totally. There's always going to be competing schools of. There's the best practices, and we can all debate on MFA and implementations, and I've had people push back on me on the security key, like you shouldn't see the security key and all that. But yeah, I mean you're right. In this case, the credential is the user's credential, and there comes a time where you need to be able to see it and know it, and then like you said, your system rotates it out in 24 or whatever your rotation period is anyway. Yeah. So excellent.
Yeah. Along those lines, the main reason that you don't see the password and you just click on the lines here and you have to specifically make an effort to enable showing the password is to prevent over-the-shoulder attacks.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there's no reason to just have a table of passwords shown all the time for the shoulder surfing hacks that are out there. No, it's very nice to see a well thought out product with current security principles in mind.
Yeah. So there's also because we deal with passwords and accounts, there's also a user password vault. This is just like any other password vault. It lets people put in whatever credentials they want. We don't manage or change or rotate these. We just store them and let them use them with all the same features.
Oh, wow. So you can use, so there's a multi-use for that tool then. So the tech can use it in some degree as a password manager, a soft password manager.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Has all the same encryption, all the same portability that the managed passwords do.
And the TechIDManager, I'm guessing, has I don't want to call it a config file, but it has some local storage on the device.
It does.
And then do you have obviously an encryption routine on that?
That passphrase that we talked about earlier, they have to enter to get in the tool and to look at any of the settings, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's the encryption key that's actually used to encrypt all the information stored locally.
That local file. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So every technician's local storage is encrypted with a different key that only they know in their mind.
Right. And then the TechIDManager has to communicate to the agents on the domain controllers at some point. There's
an intermediary piece. We'll get there.
Okay, sorry.
No problem. So the second piece, I didn't get the window. I'm going to get the window up here. The second piece that makes all this work together is a service that runs on the domain controllers. Let me get to the right documentation page. This piece there's one of the series of adapters that runs into the locations. We can look at this domain controller piece. This is the domain service. This is the piece that we actually runs as a Windows service on a domain controller to make the accounts, rotate the passwords, set all the rights appropriately for those accounts, and to disable those accounts. Because it's a service running on the domain controller, it does not require its own account to run. It actually authenticates from a technical perspective as the domain controller itself, as that machine. It's all, because I worked with MSP, I understand how important a scriptable install is. So this is one file you copy down. These 3 command lines are the minimum set of command lines to run to get it installed and get it working. And then you're done with privileged account management on that network and domain forever.
Let me ask you.
Never have to create an account.
Let me
There are
get.
lots of. No, go ahead.
Let me get technical with you again. I'm thinking the doomsday scenario. Does the service on the domain controller cycle that's the service that's in control of changing the password?
Yep.
And then the service will report the change to the TechIDManager?
Reports to a cloud host that then the TechIDManager downloads them from.
Okay. So you've got, so it's changing locally with the service, reporting the change up to the secure cloud control that you're hosting, I presume?
I host it, or you can host it yourself. This product is completely self-hostable, so I'm not involved, or my security is not involved at all. You're completely in charge.
Okay, and then it reports down to the TechIDManager to the techs. Now, give me the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to talk about conceivability. Is it conceivable that if there's a programmatical flaw in your code, which I'm sure your code is perfect, Martin, and your software is perfect, but is it conceivable that the link between the cloud repository can be broken or severed in some way, and now the domain service is just a drone in the sky that has lost kind of control connectivity with the controller? You know what I'm saying? And now there's no way to control. All the accounts are now secure, right? We've managed to secure the environment, but we've lost somehow controllability of the controller. Do you see my point?
So the domain service runs on the domain controller. Every so often it asks, it's only outgoing communication. It asks the cloud, is there anything I need to do now? Anything I need to do now? Any accounts I need to rotate? Any passwords I need to change? The accounts to create, anything to disable? The cloud then says, yes, there is. Here's your list of stuff to do. And there's a conversation that goes back and forth to ensure that at no point is the password set in the AD where the cloud host does not know about it. There's a whole conversation that goes around every single password change for every single technician all the time. So the domain service says, hey, I'm thinking about sending it to this password. And the cloud says, all right, I go to try to change that password. And then the domain service sets the password and then tells the cloud, oh, I've set that password. You can now show it as the current password. And
but mechanically, the password is set by the domain service and does have to report that to the cloud service.
Yep.
But you're saying if that were to break, you would have that the cloud service might not receive that new password, right?
There's a whole conversation that goes on there to ensure that the information got there and is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd want to chew on that a little more personally, although I don't want to put you on the spot in a demo.
No problem. It's no problem. I love technical issues. So say you have think about it this way. You have 3 technicians where accounts are being rotated and maintained by the domain service on the domain controller. It starts that first one, has a little conversation with the cloud, gets the password rotated. It starts on the second one, has a conversation.
Well, let me say this. You're saying the conversation, at least to the cloud controller, is the service will say, I'm thinking about changing it to this password, and will send it to the cloud controller. So the cloud controller at least gets that proffer. Okay. And then the cloud controller says, yeah, go for it. And then when it gets that control signal, it will then update the password. Is that how that goes?
Yeah. And if it fails, then it has never failed, but if it does fail, like the theoretical failure is you have all the other admin accounts did not fail.
Well, I'm just thinking of I'm thinking of a physical link break, right? So, but if you're saying that a way
link, you don't, if it can't have that conversation, it won't update the accounts.
Got it.
Passwords from yesterday are still valid.
Got it. Okay. So part of that password change process, and I think I'm answering my question. So basically your service will say to the cloud controller, I'm thinking of this password change. The cloud controller will log that and acknowledge that and say, go for it. And then the domain controller will change, or the service will change it on the domain controller. And no change will occur if that conversation can't happen in that order, right?
Correct.
Okay. So there you go. All right. That makes me feel better. You see my concern, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you had an agent on this,
like, you're very protective of them. I totally understand.
Right.
Yeah,
No, okay.
Yeah.
All right. What's next? So that's
So
okay.
there's that piece. There's a so those are the minimum set of commands to get it installed and running that you put in a script. There are lots of other options that you can also specify per domain. You specify to the domain controller. You can tell it what OU you want these accounts created in. And if the OU doesn't exist, it'll make them. If you change OUs in the future, it'll move the accounts. You can specify what formatting the username looks like. Like you saw that on Jeep, my username was formatted different than on Tacoma.
Right.
You can specify that on a per domain. You can use first name, last initial, last initial, company name, any set strings that you want. You can specify what the displayed name looks like, what the account description is. All kinds of different things you can specify.
Love it.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: I'm the biggest nerd you probably ever met, maybe, but at the same time, I'm the most practical nerd you've ever met. I've for the past 20 to 30 years of my nerdery, every time I get in a conversation with a fellow nerd that is just all about the command line, I just say, like, if you can do it in a GUI, why make it harder for yourself? And then the answer is, like, it's not harder if you know the command. It's like, yeah, but pictures and buttons are a lot easier. I don't care what you say. So do you have a GUI installer?
We do. You can type domain service.exe space GUI, and it will bring up a graphical command line, a graphical window to set all these parameters and show you what they all currently are.
A coder after my own heart. Keep going.
So we also have an Azure piece. All this information is on ruffiansoftware.com in our how-to articles and our release and installs.
Is that public facing, or do they have to have
it?
Also love that. Good.
Yeah. As well as our prices are all public facing too. So for our Azure AD integration, these are the steps you go through, 7 steps, and then you have a function that runs in your Azure AD tenant, which does the same thing that the domain service does. It makes accounts, it sets passwords every 24 hours and rotates them and sends them back to the cloud console, which then gets back to the tech client. It can even sets all the rights too for whatever level you want the technicians to have.
Very cool.
We are working on other adapters for other places. So the third piece is this management console. This is the piece that I host and runs in the cloud, or you can even host this if you want. If you want to self-host a product, that's totally fine. In the management console, there are techs, there are domains, and there are rights. You put the techs in groups of techs, the domains in groups of domains, and the rights in groups of rights. And you make a triplet that ties a tech group to a domain group to a rights group. Then any technician in the system, if he's in one of those triplets, he gets an account created on that domain with those domains with those rights. In this way, you can striate the access to technicians to domains across at any level you want. There's actually some documentation to describe that. And I got pictures. I didn't bring up all the windows, but I should.
No, you're doing great.
So
by the end of all these demos, it's so funny. I bet everybody is laughing at me. By the end, I become a fanboy at the end of all of these demos because good products are good products. I mean, it's so funny.
Yeah. So here's a picture to describe that. You have all your technicians, you put some in a group. All your domains, you put some in a group. Domains, tenants, machines, whatever, put them in groups. Have all the rights you can assign, you put those in groups, and you make a triplet that ties those together. Then these 2 technicians are going to get accounts created on these 3 domains with these rights.
Right.
You can have multiple different groups and triplets. And when they overlap, you get the sum of all the rights that you should have on that network.
Right.
So in this particular setup, with the green tech is in 2 different tech groups, this green domain is in 2 different domain groups. This green tech gets all 4 rights in the green domain. The green tech only gets 2 rights on this black domain. He gets 3 different rights on this orange domain.
Right.
This can be as complicated and striated for access as you want, but because almost every MSP that we talk to, 99% of them, use shared administrator accounts. Out of the box, there's an all techs group, an all domains group, and an all rights group, and a triplet that ties those 3 together. So out of the box, you don't have to do any configuration, and every technician gets an account created in every domain with all the rights that he's used to having with a shared administrator account. But the capability is there to striate it at any level you want.
Very cool. All right, so we're approaching an hour, and I want to put a bow on this. So that's the MSP's managerial UI, web
Yep.
based, with its
Yep.
own management tree, I guess, and management.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can see text. You can put them in different groups. I have a pretty simple group layout.
Yeah.
Configure who goes in what group. You can look at your domains you have. Domains, machines, and tenants all show up here. You can see what version they have. There's a status log about what time they last checked in, what they did. And then the rights, like they're the standard 80 group rights. You can put in whatever rights you want. You can add rights that are Azure specific or local machine specific. There's reporting capabilities to show you who has rights where. Like if you want to know who has enterprise admin on Jeep, these three people are assigned enterprise admin because they're in this tech group, this right group, this domain group, and this triplet.
And that reads the whole domain, not just the accounts managed and brokered by Ruffian, or?
No, this is just the accounts managed by Ruffian software.
Okay.
There are, from a reporting perspective, there are tons of event logging reporting products out there that I don't feel the need to compete with at this moment.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
We
All right. So
what's
on the roadmap? Anything coming down the pike?
So the big things on the roadmap are multi-factor authentication, MFA. Every MSP is having to, for security requirement reasons and other things, they're going to have to get MFA out there to have direct MFA when they log into a client's network, machine, or domain. What most people are doing right now is they're putting shared MFA with OTP, and they're sharing that MFA in some password vault. That's not secure. As soon as the insurance industry realizes that's what's happening, they're going to nix that. Cyber Travelers is already nixing that and saying you have to have a unique account for every person on every domain they access for cyber insurance as an MSP. Our roadmap plan, the broad stroke plan, is you're going to come to this management console, choose a domain, and say, all right, let's deploy MFA for all of our technicians on Dorito.org. Then it will take either Duo or Authy or some other authentic dual MFA of your choice, deploy it, set it up for each technician, and send all that multi-factor authentication setup information back to the tech client so that technician can set up their specific MFA just for them, and it's all unique. They don't have to do a lot of any extra.
So the MFA, the MFA configuration will be unique to every tenant, every client tenant. So
every client, every tenant, every tech. Just like with these Azure tenants, my MFA to log into those, because it's a global administrator account that I have, and Microsoft enforces I have MFA. So as when I log in with this account for the first time, or any technician logs into a tenant, an Azure tenant for the first time with this account, Microsoft goes through that MFA setup to do a push notification to their cell phone, and then their MFA is set up for their specific account on that tenant.
Right. That will be nice when the push works. It'll lower the barrier for the tech for sure.
Azure does that push right now to the Microsoft Authenticator on their phone.
To the Microsoft Authenticator. That doesn't. I don't know if that works. That's not a standard across all authenticators, though. I don't think so. If you use a different authenticator, I don't think that works.
I think they just prevented several other authenticators. I think Duo they just kicked out, didn't they?
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. Very cool. All right. So MFA's on the roadmap.
Yep. So we currently have a user password vault where it's specific to each user they can put their passwords in. We are adding, like I was in my ivory tower when I started this project, and I said, never share an account, never share a password.
Right.
Our existing user community has pushed back and said, hey, there are these things where you don't have adapters to tie in that we still need to share accounts for. So
right.
We're adding a shared password vault. You'll be able to say, here's a password vault, and you can share just a single password or a set of passwords with specific users. And then that password will sync up between all those users. That's a major feature on the roadmap. And a mobile client is also one of the major features on the roadmap. Those are the three big features, in addition to a whole series of other adapters that are in the works.
Right. A mobile client for sure. Yep. That's probably you think that's going to be a heavy lift for you probably?
No. I've done I've written mobile apps before. That's not going to be a heavy lift. It's just basic information showing. There's nothing tricky about it because you're not going to be able to.
Will you do a native app for each platform, or will you do like a progressive web app?
Native. You can't, because the way we do the encryption, we use asymmetric encryption, RSA asymmetric encryption. so that even we don't have access to any of these credentials stored in the cloud management console. They're all encrypted, the domain controller with a key that only the technician client has. So the fact that there's a thick client actually provides a significant amount of security for the encryption that's involved. So like the mobile app will be the same way. You'll have to go to the settings tab. You'll have to export this key pair and then import it in the mobile app. And then you'll have access to the same set of credentials in the mobile app that you do in the thick client here.
Got it. All right, let's put a bow on this. I thank you so much for the demonstration. I think you've got something real here, for sure. And you've heard it here first. I just wonder if you are gonna be acquired. I just wonder who's gonna acquire you. Is it gonna be Kaseya, ConnectWise, or Datto? And hopefully in a year from now, I wonder if you're gonna be sitting on your yacht doing the next demonstration. Very interesting product. When you reached out to me, real eyebrow raiser, because you do meet a need, a very real need. So very fascinating. Thank you for the time to show our viewers the product. Where do you want our viewers to go to learn more?
So if you go to ruffiansoftware.com, you can, anywhere on there, you can click this top button. There's a request a demo button. Click that button, request a demo, and see this and get all your questions answered in as much detail as you want.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, as I've been doing, I'm just going to do a readout here that I think is important. I want to thank you very much for your time today. I hope the viewers were entertained and learned something. Evernet is an independent business and IT services and consulting company and does not offer any warranty or guarantee of the products or services discussed today. Any relationships formed by and between Evernet and our clients are wholly separate from any formed with our guests or the representatives of their company. And that's my disclaimer. If you guys have any questions for me, Evernet, we do consulting for MSPs on how to run their businesses better, from practice management software, billing, to the tools used to run an MSP. You can reach me at evernetco.com, evernetco.com. I think I have a banner somewhere for that. How about that? And I want to thank Martin again. If you're interested in TechIDManager, reach Martin directly on his website, and we'll put that up one more time right there. And if you want to be a guest on the show to showcase your product or service, please go to evernet.tv. I think I've got a banner for that somewhere. I don't know where that banner is. But if you want to be a guest on our show, go to evernet.tv and click the pod guest intake survey. And I would love to have you on and showcase your products and services. So that's all we have today. Again, thanking our guest, Martin. And good luck, everybody.
Thanks for having me. Good luck, y'all.
Thanks, Martin.